Alright, so in this video, let's talk about a few different ways we can introduce variables inside of query language. So, for example, if we have this data set, and I'm gonna just create a new tab here, call this results. We could go here and create a query function from this tab using the data. I'm gonna close this on this other tab. So I'm gonna go here, select this data set, Command Shift down to select the whole thing, comma, and then we can do the select statement by doing something like select star, meaning all columns. And we can add some sort of where clause where we can say where this G column, which is our sales amount, just to scroll up so you can see here, see sales, where G is greater than, say, 8,000. So at this point, I'm going to add a comma and do the number of rows that are headers, which is just one. The first row, close parentheses, hit enter, and we get the results. So this should just filter the results to anything above 8,000. Now I'm going to just drag this down a little bit, add some lines. So this is our statement. Now we want to introduce this 8,000 here as a variable. So for example, I want to be able to just go on top here and just say sales amount and just type 7,000 or 8,000 or whatever the number may be. And I want the results to change based on this number. Now to do that, there are a couple of things you need to understand. The first part is that this select statement in this function is a string text. So if you want to be able to work with it, you have to be able to work with text. So how can we build a piece of text that will give us this? Let's just, for our purposes, just copy this text, hit escape, and put it in here. So this is the text I need to build. So the way I can build that text is using a few different methods. One of the ways would be to use concatenation. That's probably one of the most common things I would do. I would use concatenate. So what does concatenate mean? Basically, that means you're adding different pieces of text using the sign ampersand. So for example, if I do something like hello, and I'm putting in quotes because text in formulas will always go in quotations, and I'm going to do ampersand and take a second piece of text, let's say Joe, and put it in here. And if I hit enter, you'll see how the ampersand sign will combine these two pieces of strings together. At this point, we could introduce some variables to this by simply taking Joe out of here and referring to a cell. So if I refer to like this cell, see C8, that will say hello Jake. And if I wanted a space here, I would go and add a space after the word hello, like this. So then now it says hello and Jake using this cell's content and this text. And then we could add more to this text by simply doing another ampersand. Basically, just think about ampersand as a plus sign for text. And then we could add another like comma and say, today is a great day, something like that. So now we got this. Hello, Jake. Today's a great day. So basically, we now use some text combined with some information from our spreadsheet cells and then some other text combined to it. So this is the technique you can use to build whatever it is we need to build. Now, in our case, what I need is something like this. It needs to say select star where G is greater than, and 8,000 could be 8,000 or basically whatever number is in here in this B3 cell. So for that, what I would do equals and do select. See, this is the part of the text that's constant, so we type that in quotations. So I'm going to do select star where G is greater than. Now, pay attention that I'm very careful about what I'm typing here. So I include everything, including all the spaces, all the special characters, whatever you need. So I get all of this, including all the space and everything, right up to that 8,000, which is the number that's supposed to come from here. So once I get this, I'm going to do an ampersand after this and add that cell reference, which is B3, to this whole thing. And then you can see now I get this. What this is going to do when I get to this and change this to 7,000 or 700 or whatever number it is, you'll see how my text below changes. Well, because of the reason that now we use that reference to that cell to build this text. Now that's not going to change this, but that's exactly what we're going to do in our query statement. So I'm going to go back to this, and instead of this, we can simply just remove that 8,000 and keep that first part of the string exactly the same way I was doing it here in the cell, and do an ampersand and refer to the cell above. So at this point, this should be showing us anything above 7,000. If I go and change this to 9,000, see, that will update this because now we refer to that cell, and we don't really need this or this for this to work because we just have this referring to that cell, and we build that statement in the function itself. So how complicated this is going to get depends on your statement. So let's say I need to also sort this data by date after I filter this data. So regularly that statement would look like, if I just remove this out of here, let's just do it hard-coded again. So that would be, this is greater than 9,000. And then after that, I would do order by, and then I would choose the column like A, which is the date column, and that should sort this. Seems like I messed something up. Let's go back and check. Okay, I forgot to close the quotation here. See, there it is, and then we don't need this stuff here. So that's this, greater than 9,000, and we're going to order by column A, which is date. So I'm going to hit enter. There we go. Now we sorted by date, ascending, and we might want to have this descending, I guess, the latest one on top. Now, once I have this, again, I want to introduce this 9,000 as a variable in my statement, which means this 9,000 in the middle should be now replaced with this 9,000 here, which is B3. So again, we need to build this text from different pieces to get to this. And how do we do that? Again, using different pieces in concatenation. So now we have this part before that greater than 9,000. So I'm going to start with doing select star, where G is greater than space, exactly the same thing I had before. So all the text before we hit that 9,000, then we do an ampersand and refer to this cell B3, which is the 9,000. So what happens after the 9,000? We have this space ordered by A descending. So for that, again, we have some hard-coded text. So what I'm going to do another ampersand, another plus basically, and in quotes, continue with the rest of this. So again, space right after the 9,000, then we do order by A descending. Now, if this were to work, when I hit enter, I should be able to see that this statement is exactly the same as this statement. And if I go and change this to, let's say, 6,000 or 7,000, this should update with that number in the cell. So once it is accurate, then you can copy this without the equal sign, hit escape, go back to your statement and replace your hard-coded string with this concatenated string. And now we should be able to work with this together. So that means if I go change this to, let's say, 6,000, see, this updates and it's still sorted. So we're able to build our string like this. The thing here is you have to be very detail oriented when you do this, and every single character matters, which sometimes could be troubling for some people because they can miss a character here or there, and then the function doesn't work. So an example, let's say we're trying to filter to, let's say, a region. So if I was trying to filter this to a region, what I would do, let's just get back to hard coding again. I would say where, and then the region is B column in our data. B refers to original data column, not whatever I get here, even though in this case it's the same. So I'm going to say where B equals to, and when you do text, you can't just do something like south. You have to put that text in single quotes like this. But now the text that we need is this. So everything that goes within those quotes, which as you can see, it's going to be where B equals to south in single quotes. So let's say we're trying to do this using some sort of variable we have here. So I'm going to do something like region, and I'm going to type that south in here. Then I need to do that same thing. I would have to do select, and then I do star, and then where B equals to, and then what's after equals to? The apostrophe. So I'm going to do apostrophe, and then I need B4. So that means I need to have this text. So I'm going to do that in quotations. Notice this is a double quote. This is a single quote. So double quote is to close this first double quote string in our formula. So after this, I can do an ampersand, and then I can refer to the south. Now, the problem with the current formula, if I hit enter, it's not going to have the last apostrophe in there. So we need to make sure now we add that last apostrophe back to this text, which means I'm going to go back and do another ampersand to add another piece. And in quotes, I'm going to add whatever is left. So the only part that's left is that extra single apostrophe. So I'm going to put that in quotes like this. So now we have this. Now, if I don't do that last apostrophe, that will not be a valid statement. So at this point, I can take this, copy it, hit escape, go back, and replace this with my statement. Enter, and now we have this, which means at this point, if we go and change this to something like Midwest, we will get this. You want to remember that these are case sensitive. So if I do something like Midwest, I'm not going to get the rest of these options. And if I do W uppercase, I do get it. Now, to solve this problem sometimes, if you don't want this to be case sensitive, is to just take this B and put it in a function like lower. So we convert that to a lowercase. That's not going to actually change the original data to lowercase, but the comparison now is going to be after the original data is changed to lowercase, which means now, see, I get nothing. I have to do Midwest lowercase to make sure that comparison will match. One way to not have to do this Midwest in lowercase is to get back to this, and then we could just also do that lower around this part of our variable. So we could do a couple of things. We could take the actual before and use lower function in Excel to just convert that to lowercase. Now this lower is the function in Excel, and this lower is the lower from the select language. So these are two different lower functions, even though they seem to be the same. So now if I do this, see, we convert the original input to lowercase and we compare it to a lowercase value. But this is the way you could do non-case sensitive comparison if you wanted to do that. But the main thing here is, again, these are different things about query language. But as far as adding a variable to the statement, it's still the same thing. We're basically just putting that in place using this concatenation. Now, another method is to use a replacement instead of using concatenation. That would be sometimes more elegant if you only have one variable per statement, because sometimes you could have multiple variables per statement where you could potentially have this Midwest and then sales amount in the same statement. So you could just do another and say G is greater than that B4 or B3 cell, which is, again, you're going to just build it with concatenation just by adding different parts. But replacement method. So if I just go back to what this statement should actually be, let's just put this in here. So this is the actual statement. See, this is converted to lowercase using that lower function. And now we're comparing to Midwest lowercase within lowercase column B. That's the actual statement. We built it by piecing it together by doing all of this and then adding this lowercase before in this mix, and then we do this apostrophe. Now I'm going to change this a little bit. I'm going to go back and I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm just going to say Midwest in single quotes. This is really the statement we're trying to build, like this. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back here, and this is the part where we need to introduce the variable, which is Midwest. I'm going to take a couple of curly brackets like this and call this region. So I'm replacing that text Midwest with this curly brackets with the word region. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take this and go back and put this inside of a function substitute. And substitute will let us search for text and replace it by something else. So right now, this is the text. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do comma. I'm going to search for that region in curly brackets. And I want to replace that with whatever text is in here, in this B4 cell. I'm going to close parentheses and hit enter. Now you'll see how it gets select star where lower B equals Midwest. Now remember, we wanted to have Midwest in lowercase in the statement. I'm going to just make sure this B4 is made lowercase by using lower function right in here. And you should be able to see how we get that same result by doing replacement instead of using concatenation. So now I can copy this substitute formula without the equal sign, go back and replace this with this, which should produce the same results. So now I can go here and do something like southeast. Well, maybe there is no southeast. Let's try south. And we can do probably west. So you can see how this works the same way. So now what I'm doing, instead of getting inside of my string and breaking out of it and getting back to it, I can simply just do substitute and replace the old whatever's in the bracket with something else. Now this is going to get a little trickier with this substitute if you have more than one. Still doable, just going to be trickier as you start introducing more variables. So for example, maybe you want to make sure that after this is basically filtering to a region, you want to make sure that and that G is greater than 6,000, which is that sales amount number we need to refer to on top here. Now, right now, I'm just hard coding, so it works, but I need to replace now this 6,000 with the value coming from here. Again, if I wanted to use this substitute method to do this, then what I'm going to have to do is replace this 6,000 with some brackets and call this one like amount or whatever it is you want to call this. Now, the problem with this, it's not going to work like this. We need to replace that amount with that 6,000 text. So right now I get an error. And the reason for that, we can look at the reason by simply taking this part of this, copy it, and go back in here and just do an equal sign and paste so you can see what the results are. We get this, and amount still says amount in brackets. Now that also needs to be replaced with this 6,000. So what I could do, I could just take this whole thing and put this another substitute function around this whole thing, and then go back to the end of this, do a comma, and then search for amount, comma, and replace it by this 6,000. So it's still doable. It's just you're going to get a lot of these nested substitute functions in here, which may not be very desirable. So you can go with this route, or you could go with the route of just concatenating from different pieces. So at this point, you could just take this whole thing, copy it, hit escape, go back to this, and replace this middle part with this substitute that gets you the text you need. So that should now have both variables in place. So now I can do Midwest here. And then if I just go here and do something like 9,000, we should be able to see how this filters to the right values based on these two cells. And that's the second method. And some people feel like they want to just use concatenate function instead of using ampersand or using this. The main thing you need to remember, you need some way to produce the text, the final result text for this function. And however you get to it, it doesn't matter. So if I wanted to do the same result using something like concatenate function, I would use concatenate. And concatenate is basically that same thing where we combine pieces of strings together. But this time we use the function, which means we comma separate all the pieces we need to be combined. So the first part I need is select star. And then I need my where clause. And then we need that lowercase b column to be equal to whatever the value was in single quotes. So it needs to be an apostrophe, then we need the actual region. So after the apostrophe, I'm gonna close the quotes. So that will be the first part. So usually this is where you would use the ampersand, but now because we're in concatenate function, we're just gonna use a comma instead. Then after this, I want to have that lower function from Excel and put this west in it to make sure it's lowercase, comma. After this, I'm going to do a quote and do another apostrophe because we need to close this apostrophe in here. And you can see kind of that shows us the preview in here. We have the west in apostrophes at this point. Now, after that, I need a space and I have to do and G, which is that sales column, is greater than, and then quotation. And after this, I need to add that 9,000. So I'm going to do a comma and click on this. And if I hit enter, I should get this. Now, if this string is accurate, then what should happen if you just copy this without the equal sign? Hit escape, go back to this and replace this, what seems to be the substitute function in here. It should work the same way. So it works. So now if I do 9,500, it should still work. If I do 2,000, it should still work. So you can see now we have what we call variables within our statement. So hopefully that makes sense. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.